Hello everyone, this is General History, and this is part 17, I believe, of our Civil War Ultimate General Civil War playthrough. We just completed the battle for the Manassas Depot, and now we're moving on to Second Bull Run. So let's go ahead and very quickly recap. So after the battle of the Peninsula Campaign, the 7 Days battle, Lee then sends Jackson north to take on Pope's army and keep them in check, while he and Longstreet watch over McClellan. Uh, Jackson would eventually encounter Pope's army at in an area known as Cedar Mountain, and they would fight the Battle of Cedar Mountain, where Jackson very narrowly gets a victory. He was almost defeated, but he does pull out a victory. And they, as we talked about, narrowly capturing Pope and his old rival, oh God, Nathaniel Banks. Sorry, had to think about that one for a second. After that, realizing that McClellan was now held in check and wasn't going to move forward and engage, uh, Lee then moves himself and not Jackson, Longstreet to meet Jackson. From that point, he then sends Jackson on a large sweeping flanking maneuver through the Blue Ridge Mountains, then through an area known as the Thoroughfare Gap, and then that's where Jackson then attacks the Manassas Depot and the Manassas Junction, and that's where we got that last battle. Now, originally, Lee's plan was to have Longstreet come then from the south, in a hope that Pope would then retreat and focus on Jackson. That's when Longstreet would go from the south and move forward. Unfortunately, Jackson's maneuver was almost so well done that Pope didn't retreat when Lee thought he would. So he ends up sending Longstreet along the same path that Jackson took, uh, which then ends up working in his favor, which we'll talk about when we get into the battle. Uh, Now, after Jackson moved through, Union would actually then set up troops at Thoroughfare Gap, so Longstreet would have to push through that position. But in the meantime, uh, Jackson is waiting for Longstreet. He had moved away from the supply depots at Manassas and is set up at a railroad cut that he found while moving his forces into the area where he was the year before at the Battle of First Manassas. Like I said, they discovered this railroad cut. He decides that it's a great defensible position. He has his back to a area known as Stony Ridge, which is a nice area full of wooded terrain, which he can use to hide his forces. And like I said, that is where we sort of set up as we start the second battle at Bull Run. So let's read the briefing really quick. Following the recent events of the Peninsula Campaign, should say a portion of our forces initiated a wide flanking maneuver, as we talked about, and raided the Union supply depot at Manassas Junction, which is what we did. As a result, the Union army under General Pope was forced to abandon his defensive line at the Rappahannock River and move towards Washington. We gambled by leaving Richmond almost undefended to attack his isolated Union army. Now, Pope's army was not the Army of the Potomac. I know I've heard some people, not always, but some people tend to get it confused with McClellan's Army of the Potomac. But and this is really, I mentioned in episodes before that most of the time Union armies were named after the rivers that they were staged near or created near. Uh, so obviously Army of the Potomac, Army of the Cumberland, such and such. Pope's army was a little different. They were referred to as the Army of Virginia, not to be confused with, or the Union Army of Virginia, not to be, of course, confused with Lee's newly named Army of Northern Virginia, which, of course, consisted of Jackson and Longstreet's wings. So let's go ahead and start. As you can see, we can bring up to four divisions, or corps in this case. We are going to go ahead and make my first corps, what would be traditionally Stonewall Jackson's corps, the ones really holding down the battle for the first 2 days, and then we'll bring in Sidney Johnston and Longstreet's corps for the second. Now Longstreet only has a partial corps. He only has 2 of the 3 divisions he could have, But as you can see, we now have 59,000 soldiers, which is actually about 9,000 more soldiers than the Confederates brought to bear during the battle. Union it says the Union has 10,000. I think that's because my reconnaissance isn't that good at the moment. Historically, the Union had about 77,000 troops at Second Manassas. Now, they only ended up engaging about 62,000 because some were held back or arrived late in the days on the last day of the battle. Now, Manassas is an interesting battle because it's going to be a 3-day battle, more like a 2.5-day battle. But we'll go ahead and talk about that once we get in there, so let's go ahead and start. Alright, so our raid to the Union's massive supply depot at Manassas Junction was a success. This huge blow to their rear dislodged the Army of Virginia from their defense lines along the Rappahannock River. We now move northwest to challenge them to follow us. As you can see, we'll be playing on a huge map. Alright, General Pope, the new commander of the Army of Virginia, is isolated. This is a good location to set up and trap him with all of our forces before he is reinforced by General McClellan. So McClellan moved from the peninsula up into back into his original positions in the Potomac. In fact, he started making landfall in Alexandria. So some of his forces actually did participate in the Second Battle of Manassas. We took a big risk when we left Richmond undefended, but as we expected, McClellan did not attempt any offensive maneuvers on the peninsula. The rest of our army will arrive tomorrow and deal a flanking attack to the unsuspecting Yankees. Not tomorrow, though. Okay, what else? Currently, General Pope assembles his army and reinforces near Henry Hill. He will most likely withdraw to Washington to the northeast unless we do something about it. Now, not all his forces were actually located on Henry Hill. That's a little bit of a misnomer there. A diversionary attack would probably convince him to stay in the area and fight. On the 28th, a lot of his forces were actually still located in Centerville, but he was moving forces through the area of Manassas at the time. As well, right here, the division of Rufus King is heading to join Pope's main army through the small town of Groveton. It is time to draw their attention. We are dispatching some of our forces forward, and then we should attempt to defend Bronner's farm. General, it is advised not to risk losing many men or artillery in this engagement. Night is falling. Our main purpose is to reveal our position and lure Pope's army into attacking us tomorrow. So we need the army at the ready for this defensive battle. Okay. I don't know. I got this wood line here, the wood lot. Now, traditionally, okay, so the setup for this was, like I said, Jackson retreated from Manassas Depot and set up on a railroad cut, which you can actually see here. Yeah, this is supposed to be the unfinished railroad cut. So a railroad cut is basically the line of, if you don't know what it is basically a line of basically the entrenchments that they would then dig, where they would then push the put the rail down for building a railroad. This was actually going to be a railroad that was being built since the 50s, 1850s that is, and then was given up at the onset of the war. Jackson then saw this as a great defensible position, and in some places it was so deep that Confederates would actually have difficulty manning the positions, but he was able to hide his forces there, and like I said, it was right in front of this line of trees and ridges known as Stony Ridge. So it was a great defensible position for Jackson. Now, on the evening of the 28th, Jackson was standing atop one of the hills, apparently by himself. At least that's how the story goes. He was sort of watching over the area when he noticed a division marching through, a Union column. These were units from Rufus King's division, as the briefing mentioned. These units included John Hatch, John Gibbon, Abner Doubleday, and Messina Patrick. These forces were moving towards the area of Groveton to meet up with the rest of the army near Centerville. Jackson then rode back to his lines and in a very quiet manner approached his commanders and said the words, "Bring out your men, gentlemen." And that was it. And that is when the Confederates would then march forward and then begin engaging with artillery. So that's where we are. That's where we're going to start this battle. Alright, so I'm going to deploy my forces forward. Sort of like this. I'm going to deploy some skirmishers as well. Sort of to guard the Bronner farm. And the artillery that I'm going to leave back there. So as you can see, there are some forces already up near Groveton. They are the forces under Hatch, and we saw some Union artillery there. So we do have Doubleday and Gibbon now moving forward. They don't quite know we're here yet, as you can see by the little eyes. So hopefully we can get up on them in surprise. We're moving in with the old first. So now they know we're here. I was hoping to get up there before they got to the tree line, so this might become a little bit harder of a battle here. Now, historically, what had happened was Jackson opened up with the artillery first. We're going to have him halt there. Bring him up in reserve. Jackson first opened up with artillery. Gibbon believed that this was artillery belonging to Stuart's cavalry. Because he knew Stuart was operating in the area. We do have Patrick coming up on our flank. So Gibbon sent the 2nd Wisconsin through the woodlot near the Bronner farm to then hopefully take the guns, but at least engage them and at least get them off its back. Now, what ends up happening is as the 2nd Wisconsin moves out of the woodlot and into the open near the Bronner farm, they're clearing out skirmishers as they go. Confederate skirmishers, that is, but then they sort of realize what a mistake they had made, because they come face to face, and well, not really actually face to face, but they come upon the Stonewall Brigade that is now set up on their right flank, and they take a volley from them, but they hold their position. Gibbon rides back to the rest of his forces, brings up the rest of his regiments in his brigade, and they make this 2-hour-long stand just near the Bronner farm, engaging with the units of the Stonewall Brigade. Eventually, Jackson would pour more units into the battle. Abner Doubleday would also send units from his brigade into the battle. Jackson would actually move, and this is all happening within 100 yards. So think about that, less than a football field. These forces set up, mostly in the open. The Confederates did have some cover. They had actually set up near a fence line near the Bronner farm. So they did have some defensive positions, whereas the Union was pretty much in the open. But just think about that, for 2 hours, the Union forces under Gibbon held their own. Now eventually, like I said, Jackson would eventually move up an artillery piece within that 100-yard span, and then start pouring artillery in them at point-blank range. This is really what ends up breaking the Union forces there, and forces Gibbon to retreat, but this isn't going to be a fighting retreat. Unlike other times where the Union lines would just break, or in Confederate lines too. Typically during this, if you're going to retreat, you're going to retreat. You're going to rout, you're going to run away quickly. You're not really going to do a fighting retreat, but Gibbon and his men do a fighting retreat. Now Gibbon's men were already in a pretty interesting brigade in that they wore these very interesting hats. They were black hats with these large plumes on them. They were sort of known as the Black Hat Brigade. Now, after this battle, I believe it was this battle, it might have been Antietam, but I'm pretty sure it was 2nd Manassas. After this battle, they would become known as the Iron Brigade for basically the way that they just stood in place. I don't know how they're firing at us. They can't see us, according to that. But yeah, they become known as the Iron Brigade. I'm pretty positive because of this battle. I could be getting my history wrong here, so don't quote me on that. But it was either this battle or the Antietam, which would come a few weeks later, where they would get the moniker the Iron Brigade, but I'm almost positive it was this battle here. Now, Now, like I said, Union forces were going to retreat. Now, Jackson led his forces from the front. Uh, he personally took command of his own forces here, uh, rather than deferring command to Richard Ewell. However, this didn't stop Richard Ewell from becoming injured. He would actually take a mini ball into his, was it his right knee? I believe it was his right knee. And he would end up having to have his leg amputated. So Richard Ewell would have to, would not be part of the Corps for the next couple months. Also, Taliaferro was also injured during the battle. So right off the back, Jackson loses 2 of his commanders for this battle. I am very content with just holding my position. They don't seem to be intent with forcing their will on me, so I'm actually gonna stop supply at the moment. I don't want to just eat up supply. But yeah, so right off the bat, Jackson loses 2 of his commanders. Now, casualties were pretty high for this relatively small 3-hour engagement. Both sides pretty much 1-to-1 casualties, although the Confederates lost a little bit more. It was about 1,250 men to about 1,150 men. Sorry, I had to think about how to word that. To the Union's 1,150, that is. So the Confederates did end up losing a little bit heavier than the Union did. Now, what did all this mean? This meant that Jackson was able to spring his trap, because what this did is it made Pope think that he had Jackson on the run. Because of course Jackson then pulls back his forces to Stony Ridge, and what Pope believes is he now has Jackson trapped. So of course the next day he orders an all-out assault on Jackson's lines. But we'll talk about that when we get to it. For now, though, I think I'm just going to fast forward this. Now, earlier that day, Jackson did receive word from Longstreet that Longstreet did break through the small Union defense force at Thoroughfare Gap. He had taken up positions on the heights above Thoroughfare Gap, and it was a relatively, well, not even relatively, it was a small engagement, less than 100 casualties combined, both sides. But unfortunately for Pope, he did not know this at the time. And that would play into the next couple days battle. Alright, so let's go ahead and finish this fight. There's no reason to keep going. That was a lot smaller of an engagement than what actually happened. So like I said, the engagement was, although small compared to what would happen over the next 2 days, was still pretty costly for both sides. That was not costly for either side in this battle, although I think they took a little bit worse than we did. So now we're getting better recon reports. Now it's saying that the enemy has 62,000 men, 145 guns. We now have, well, we still have pretty much the same amount. We pretty much didn't lose anything. So yeah, the Union has about the same amount of troops that they had for the actual battle. But we will have, so they outnumber us. Not as badly as they did historically, but we'll have better defensive positions, so hopefully that won't matter. So the new briefing says our plan is going well. Pope took the bait and is preparing to attack us at Stony Ridge. We must hold a strong defensive position until reinforcements arrive. We expect the first forces late afternoon. Alright. Let's go ahead and start. It seems that Pope fell into a trap. He mobilizes his forces to attack. We spurt large formations of infantry advancing from this direction behind Matthews Hill. There was also enemy activity from southwards. Watch your flanks and hold your ground, General. If we lose Stony Ridge before our reinforcements arrive, our plan will fail and we will have to retreat. Alright, let's go ahead and pause and see what we could do here. Let's go ahead. moves more of these forces into the railroad cut here. Who did we move? Did we move the Lousy Rag or Irish Brigade? Okay, so we're gonna go ahead. We're gonna start breaking off some skirmishers from these units. We're gonna move Irish Brigade into sort of this area behind. Like I said, I believe I put, yeah. I'm gonna put some of my forces on Sudley Ford Road here, or near the Sudley Ford. So, really quickly, so Jackson, of course, his plan was to hold off until Longstreet could arrive. He actually sends Stuart to guide Longstreet's forces into the battle. And then he positions 20,000 of his troops along this 3,000-yard line that we see here, so nearly a mile. Wait, trying to. Alright, gotta go back to school. How long is a mile? I forget. I'm not even gonna pretend. So I think that's actually over a mile. My teachers will be so mad at me right now. But he also positions A.P. Hill's forces north of Sudley, A.P. Hill was located on his left. Fitzlee's cavalry and artillery was located on the opposite bank of Sudley Ford. Now, Pope's men were actually sort of, we'll go ahead and play, but Pope's men were actually sort of out of position at this time. I'm actually going to move Manassas battery forward with my other batteries. Do I only have 2 batteries at the moment? Where are my batteries? Well, I guess I only had 3 batteries. So Pope's men were sort of out of position everywhere. Now, they had retreated. The forces that engaged at Bronner Farm retreated in separate directions the night before. Some forces were in the south. Some forces were back in Manassas. Some forces were in Centerville. So it took a while for Pope had no idea where McDowell's corps was during all this either. So, like I said, they were sort of everywhere. So they really didn't know where. So it took them a while to sort of organize their forces throughout the day. So that's why they didn't attack till a little later in the mid morning. I can't remember the exact times that the forces attacked, so I apologize. So yeah, the Irish Brigade was sort of set up there. Actually, I'm going to move the Irish Brigade. Basically just in reserve, just to hopefully fire it. In fact, I'm going to move these units forward as well. I don't really need to hold those lines at the moment. I'm going to put the Bloody First up on this hill so we can see if there's anybody moving up. Actually, shoot. I guess I don't need to do that. Unless the battle expands, because there's no way... Yeah, there's no way to actually... just in case. You know what, I'll just leave these forces here just in case. So like I said, they didn't even really know where McDowell's men were at the time. They eventually would find McDowell in Manassas with some of Porter's troops as well from McClellan's Army of the Potomac. Alright, I'm pretty confident. I'm actually going to put sort of extra Billy Smith's boys up towards this area. Actually, move the skirmishers up there. We'll leave them in reserve. And the sharpshooters were actually moving to this wood line for now. Just for now. So we're starting to get that frontal assault. Now once Pope got all his forces sort of together and in positions to attack, he ends up sending Siegel, which is one of his corps commanders, ends up leading the attack during the early portions of the day while Pope is still organizing his forces. Pope want to get to the battle to a little later in the day. So it's saying Kearney's on the left flank. Okay, so they're moving it through right here. Bring the Wise Legion up a little bit more. But yeah, so Siegel and his corps eventually would fight mostly in this area here. I'm trying to remember, I believe it was Reynolds who puts his men sort of on the Union right here. They don't actually commit to any attacks, they just sort of sit there and guard the Union left. And in the meantime, he's also sending, who was it? Porter, Fitzjohn Porter, like I said, who was found in Manassas. He ends up sending him to the south along the Warrington Road. Warrington Road? I'm pretty sure it was the Warrington Road he sent him along. And like I said, moves them trying to find the Confederate right flank, which he believes is a lot farther south towards Gainesville. Alright, so we also have Stalls and Stewart's Steinwes. So a lot of the forces that took place on the Union are forces that you have in here, which were part of the forces of the Army of Virginia, Union Army of Virginia, would eventually become sort of the famous units that you'll hear about the rest of the war. So a lot of these units you're going to notice will eventually become the 11th Corps, the 1st Corps, particularly of, what was it, not Chantilly, not Charlottesville, oh god, battle where Stonewall dies, god. It is totally, totally blanking on the name of the battle right now, but that battle, as well as Gettysburg, is where these units that participate in this battle sort of will eventually start gaining their fame, both undeserved, well, not, I won't say undeserved, what's the word I'm looking for, attention, I would say, maybe not so much fame in terms of some of these divisions. Alright, so as the sharpshooters set up, we could see some forces moving into these wood line here near Dugan Ridge. So if you remember, actually I believe, yeah, this is Dugan Ridge here, so it's just to the west of Dugan Ridge. This, if you actually remember our earlier battle with First Manassas, this is Matthews Hill right here, where we held off for a short period of time before having to fall back. So as you can see, the battles of First Manassas and Second Manassas are pretty well intertwined. This one taking place more towards the Sudley Ford Road area, and of course Sudley Church, which would be right about this. I believe this is supposed to represent Sudley Church, although it looks more like a farm. Well, we are getting charged. So we'll move the Bloody 8th there to support. So Siegel attacked across a broad front as he waited for Porter to move into position. Now, just like they had done in many battles previously, the Union sends in their forces piecemeal, basically brigade by brigade, and the Confederates are able to sort of absorb these blows. So Jackson does this idea of where he sends his forces, as he's getting attacked, he's sort of absorbing these blows and then counterattacking as after this first initial absorption of blows. I'm gonna get the, oh wait, no, okay, I don't need to get them out of there. So setting up the sharpshooters on the flank was a great idea. So yeah, so basically, Siegel start pushing in his men piecemeal. Jackson's absorbing these blows. They're constantly going back and forth. Now on the left, under who was it? Schurz? I think it was Schurz. The left saw the most action that day. There was plenty of times where the Union would actually get up to the Confederate lines and actually engage in hand-to-hand combat right up near Sully Ford Road. These one of the bigger, or the not bigger brigades, but one of the brigades that really took so much of the blows was what was it? Maxie Gregg's brigade, who would then become a little bit more famous later in the day. But they're the ones who sort of absorb a lot of these blows. Like I said, from units that would eventually become the 11th Corps. Actually, let me guess. These are my howitzers. About 6-pound field guns. They're way out of range. I'm gonna have to move these guns forward. I just noticed they're not attacking. So there's no point in having these forces up here. We'll keep the skirmishers here just in case the battle opens up and we actually end up getting forces put along this road here. Now, like I said, he attacks along the broad front, and although the left really sees a lot of the combat, especially a lot of the close quarters combat, like I said, they do attack across a whole broad front. Specifically here in this area, I believe this is supposed to be this area here, which was a break in the Union lines. The 82nd Ohio, who were part of Milroy's Corps, which we actually, or brigade, which we see here, under the confusion of fire that they were receiving as they advanced, they actually end up finding this ravine in between the railroad cut, which sort of was in between the Confederate lines. This became known as the dump. And what ends up happening is the 82nd Ohio gets in behind Jackson's forces, specifically Trimble's forces under Jackson, and begin firing on Trimble's forces. Now, unfortunately for the 82nd, they don't go completely unnoticed, as Confederate forces then brought up some reserve and were able to clear the 82nd out, which the 82nd also lost their commander during this battle, which really caused a lot of confusion, not only just in the 82nd, but as they retreated out of this area known as the dump, they end up causing disarray and disorder in a lot of other troops along the Union lines, which causes them to retreat. So you sort of see this massive retreat out of the center of Pope's forces. Now, again, going back to the left, Schurz ends up ordering another advance, this time as Kearny comes forward a little later in the day. He believes Kearny is going to support him, so he sends in his troops. Again, the left sees a lot of action, specifically the two brigades involved, again, two very well-known, or would eventually become well-known in the 11th Corps under Krasnowski. I believe, again, 11th Corps was made up out of a lot of German-speaking units. This is what ends up becoming this, we'll talk about it later as we get closer, but especially after, God, I still can't think of the name of that battle where Jackson dies. Chancellorsville? Is it Chancellorsville? Yeah, Chancellorsville. Sorry. The 11th ends up getting blamed at Chancellorsville. They become the scapegoats. They become the scapegoats at Gettysburg as well for that first day of Gettysburg. So yeah, and a lot of it was because they were German speaking. There were a lot of immigrants in the 11th Corps, so they become the scapegoats of the army, so to speak. And at this battle, they were actually charged, like I said, Krasinski and Schimmelfegen, Fenig, I can never pronounce his name. Again, try the left of the Confederate lines. They try pushing him in. Like I said, they're expected to be supported by Kearny, who had come up just a little time before. Unfortunately for Sigel and those two brigades, they don't. Kearny ends up actually crossing the creek and begin to threaten the Confederate left with Orlando Poe's forces, which are currently right here in the battle. Now, Poe ends up engaging with the artillery that was stationed along the ridge there, and the cavalry under Fitz Lee. They end up not. They sort of get discouraged by what they see over there, so they look at it as a opportunity they're not going to be able to take advantage of. So they end up retreating across the creek again once they are over there. But it does make Jackson sort of worried, and he ends up sending the horse artillery under Pelham who was also engaged the day before, to support as well. So he sort of pulls artillery away from the main battle. So it did have that effect uh, for the Union. Now, every time that like I said, we talked about how Jackson would do this technique where they would absorb the blow and then countercharge or counterattack the Union forces and sort of push them back. But every time they did, they came under heavy artillery fire from Dugan Ridge, that's where the Union had set up most of their artillery brigades. Sorry, I just noticed. First VA sharpshooters, look at that. 263 kills, no deaths. They're gonna get some experience upgrade as long as they don't take too much damage. So like I said, that's where Poe ends up retreating across the river. That's sort of where we stand at the moment. And it was about this time, after that second assault by Sigel, that the 3rd Corps and the 9th Corps, under Joe Hooker and Isaac Stevens respectively, arrive at the battlefield. This also brings Pope into the battle as well. He sort of takes command from the front from Sigel. Now Sigel is feeling very confident about the battle. He thinks the battle's sort of going the way he wants it to go. But when Pope takes command, he's worried about the casualties that have been taken. He's also worried about the fact that they haven't made much progress. In fact, he begins to think maybe he should retreat. But he decides against this due to the political ramifications. He gets word that McDowell's forces are now closing in on the battle, so he decides to keep up the attack. Right, you guys hold. He decides to keep up the attack, but also he's not aware, though, that coming from Thoroughfare Gap about the same time is Longstreet. Longstreet's now, his lead elements are beginning to arrive on the field. Now, along with those lead elements comes Stuart's cavalry. They actually engage with Porter and McDowell. McDowell, who was coming up, like I said, along the Warrington Road. This is actually Groveton. Warrington Road, I believe, would have been farther south. But I don't think this battle incorporates all that. Oh, we're starting to finally see Reynolds' forces on our right. Oh, and now we have Porter assaults. Okay, so let's see. Pope, for some reason, stalled. He stopped attacking us. Okay. There was sort of like I said, about this time, there was sort of a lull in the battle. He appears to have mobilized for an all-out attack. We also spotted a large formation, probably Porter's division, making a flanking maneuver towards our right flank. Cavalry was dispatched to cause a delaying action. If Porter succeeds, we will be in deep trouble. But here's the good news. Our first reinforcements are near and will arrive in about 2 hours. It is advised not to engage them. Have patience. Tomorrow, the Federal forces will be exhausted and depleted by the continuous fighting, and all of our reinforcements will be present and rested. So that isn't actually what happens. I don't know why the computer's advising that. Now, Lee wanted to press the attack right as he got into the battle. So the fight continues at Stony Ridge. General, hold your ground. Now, once Longstreet and Lee arrived, we'll go ahead and pause really quick. Lee wanted to attack. He wanted to get in there. But Longstreet advised against it. He said that they should hold, they should wait. Several times, in fact, Lee kept trying to push this attack. But he sort of got pushback from Longstreet saying that it's probably not advised. Let's go ahead and wait and hold. So at this point, what I think I might start doing, or at least might start looking at, it doesn't look like the battle is going to extend. So we're not going to get that sort of flanking maneuver by Kearny's forces. It doesn't look like, at least. So I'm going to start bringing up these skirmishers, putting them in position, because I got a feeling that we're about to start getting hit hard by a lot of these units. Now, eventually, in the real battle, the left will break, but hopefully that won't happen to us. We do have Reynolds' forces that have finally taken up position just north of Groveton at the Verona Farm, which is historically accurate. But yeah, so what happens along the southern road as Porter advances is he actually he meets up with Stuart's cavalry, and they have a brief but very ferocious engagement where Stuart ends up halting Porter's and McDowell's advance. Now, and this begins a series of confusing things that happen along the Union lines. First, Pope issues an order telling McDowell and Porter to advance on Gainesville and attack the Confederate right. But due to this, I don't remember how the order is worded, but the order was very poorly worded, and it really didn't express the way he actually wanted to do. What am I doing? He didn't really express the way he wanted to happen. I guess it made it sound like I said, I don't remember the whole what happened, but I believe he basically misrepresented what he wanted McDowell and Porter to do at that time. So it ends up being very confusing and very poorly worded. So McDowell and Porter don't end up doing attacking the right flank, because, like I said, I believe it sounded like along the lines of basically just go to Gainesville and wait there. It's essentially the gist of it. I don't remember the exact wording or the story behind it. But then, at the same time, after the engagement with Stuart's cavalry actually gets this idea where they actually take logs and start beginning to drag them behind their horses. And what this does is it kicks up all the dirt, and this dirt gets kicked up in the air, and it makes it seem like large numbers of Confederate forces are moving into the area, which then confuses Union leadership in the area. So we actually are starting to see some Porter's forces attacking us on our right. And then the final thing, which again points to Union confusion, is Buford. John Buford finally, who has been reconnoitering the area for the Union, comes upon Porter and McDowell's forces and lets them know that in Gainesville there are currently a large, significant number of Confederate forces that are arriving. This is, of course, Longstreet's forces. Now, the problem is McDowell and Porter do not tell Pope this. Pope won't find out till much later that day that they are now threatening, or that there is another corps coming up in defense of Jackson. Alright, so we're starting to get some ammo problems. So that's forgot all about that. So let's go ahead and move up my supply wagon. We're holding. Actually, no. The old Minden Guard actually got forced out, so we'll go ahead and put the Bloody 8th in position there. So at this point, Pope orders another all-out attack around 3 o'clock, which is pretty well. What's going on now? Okay, we just barely get into position. Move the Irish Brigade down. And then, now they're gonna get assaulted. So we might see some breakage here. Let's move the Wise Legion up. So yeah, we're starting to get this all-out assault across our lines now. Move my cavalry in just in case we break and need to send the cavalry in to try and hold off their advance. The first VA is now starting to come under fire. Might go ahead and pull them out. Let's get out of there. So Reno's forces are now coming up. So yeah, we are sort of in this midst of a all-out attack. Now during this attack, okay, the old first did get pushed back. Move the Irish. No, we gotta hold the Irish Brigade here. Move the Old Dominion over. We were able to break them as well, at least. Should have sent my cavalry in to sort of hold them back. So the VA sharpshooters ended up taking some heavy casualties. So a brigade under Brigadier General Grover, for the Union, gets all the way to the railroad embankment and forces a bulge to form, sort of in the center, and a serious engagement, including hand-to-hand combat, ends up breaking out here in the middle, and the rebels end up beginning to pour troops into the attack. Artillery fire from Dugan's Ridge sort of keeps them in check. Trimble at this point is also wounded during this all-out attack. Fire. Let me get the old burst back up there. We are starting to break here in the middle, on our left. We do not have the forces. Alright, I'm gonna actually possibly start sending some forces backwards. So, like I said, this Union attack is actually starting to force me back. Let me go ahead and get some of my forces out of here. Actually, I need to break off. I need to get all these. They're on my flank. I need to get everybody out. I'll leave my skirmishers there to try and hold them back. Move my sharpshooters up. So, Grover's assault. Oh, shoot, they pushed back the regs too. So, Grover's assault ends up sort of failing, although making great ground. Like I said, it ends up failing. Where is the Wise Legion going? My god, what are you doing? Basically because they were unsupported. So, they get into this battle and they're unsupported. Because, again, the Union army is being sent in piecemeal. So, even though they make a dent there in the middle, they end up getting pushed back. I'm sending my cavalry in just to sort of get Taylor's brigade to run away. Get out of here. I'm gonna go ahead and move all my skirmishers back in. Whoa! Why did they break? They barely took any casualties. I don't know why they broke, other than the morale is down. I need to focus my commander on the middle here. Actually gonna break them out of that. It's obviously not a very good defensive position, at least in the position where Jackson is coming in. Move the skirmishers back in. So there's Grover there, like I said, who would have made the assault, but the historical assault. Now during this time, Reynolds was actually ordered to move west, so Reynolds' forces who were originally here would have been ordered to move west along the turnpike, but would eventually encounter John Hood's division from Longstreet. Now when Reynolds would pull back without engaging and report this to Pope, but Pope believed it was actually just Porter's Corps moving forward. And it was shortly after this time too that after Grover's assault failed, Pope would order Kearney to attack Jackson's left. Now this is where we see the big break in the lines. Like I said, this is where we see Maxie Gregg take out his Revolutionary War saber. If you haven't heard of this anecdote, he cuts down some, I believe they were poppies that were growing along the ground, and he says this: "Let us die here, my men. Let us die here." Kearney's troops were able to push Gregg's, Branch, and Thomas's troops, who were holding down Jackson's left. They were able to push them back out of the cut, which also ended up threatening all the other troops along the cut down, I believe, to about Archer. I believe Archer was like the sort of the last troop not to retreat there at the cut. But Jubal Early, who actually started his started the day on the Union right, or the Confederate right, I apologize. I'm actually going to send some extra policemen boys to help push away Jackson. I don't know what's going on there. In fact, let me get cavalry over there. Jubal Early, who, like I said, started out on the Confederate right, had actually moved all the way to the left, and his brigades were able to get in there and sort of shore up the Confederate left that day, which sort of put an end to Kearney's push there on the left. Oh, we just lost the Irish. Move up to lousy reg. Actually going to move the Tigers up here as well. We're not really getting too much on our left. In fact, let me go ahead and move my cavalry back. I don't know what happened to Jackson. There's Jackson. Oh no, AP Hill is killed! There we go. That's unfortunate. So they are really pushing me a lot harder than I expected. I'm really wondering where my reinforcements are. I am losing a ton of casualties. I'm gonna actually begin to retreat my artillery to the tree line here. So was my middle is just completely obliterated at this point. The only unit that's still holding its defensive works is the Innocence Brigade. Where is my reinforcements? No, bloody 8! Don't charge! Don't countercharge! Get back in! No, god dang it! All right, pulling back to the tree line. Innocence, you get out of there as well. Run, everybody, run! Doing? Fall back. Move stone walls men into position. Golden Parrot is killed, so my cavalry charge is failing. Actually, no, they're not doing too bad. I guess their leader just got killed. And now we got Kemper is killed as well. Oh my god. Oh, that's why he's doing the freaking open. Ugh. Alright guys, I think I am going to pause this here. I just realized I keep doing this. I keep wanting to make my episodes about a half an hour long, but I keep getting carried away and lose track of time. But so we're going to end this episode here and pick up in the next episode. Hopefully at least get to the third day of the battle here, as our lines are beginning to break, but we are still holding the ridge line here. So hopefully that continues as we get our reinforcements in. We got about an hour and a half to hold against this Union onslaught. So thank you all for watching, and this is General History signing out. Bye-bye.